Welcome to Recovery His Way. I'm your host, Tom Reynolds, on the campus of His Way here in Huntsville, Alabama. We've been probing this idea of the 12 steps and how they relate to Scripture and to the teachings of Jesus and that type of thing for a number of weeks. We've probed that and investigated it, and more recently been talking to individuals who have walked out these various steps. And so we want to continue that today. The steps that we've been covering kind of take us through the forgiveness part, both accepting God's forgiveness for us and kind of working through our aspects of things. And now as we get into steps 8 and 9, we're starting to think about how to take the forgiveness that we've experienced and that we've applied in our lives and start applying it in our relationships. And so this step very much is toward that end. Today, I have a very special guest, Jameson with us to share his experience of this 9th step. So Jameson, it's good to have you.
Glad to be here.
Jameson, I know you've been a part here about 6 months or so?
6 months,
okay. Yeah. And you've been our house leader for 4 of those months?
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Okay.
I was maybe a week or 2 into Blue Band.
Yeah, okay. Yep. Awesome. So the guys here respect you. They look to you for leadership, and I know you've made a big difference in the program here, but I know it's been a journey to get here.
Yeah.
So maybe you could share a little bit about the backstory about what brought you to His Way in the first place and what your journey has been.
Okay. Well, I had a pretty good childhood. We weren't rich, but we weren't poor. I had a lot of friends. But my relationship with my mom was kind of, it was rocky. She was real hard on me, and so it kind of made me, I had this feeling growing up that, I wasn't like good enough, or I wasn't, worthy. And so it kind of made me lash out. I was a class clown in school and stuff.
Lash out, class clown, what do you mean? I mean, lash out sounds like you're going to beat up people, and then class clown sounds a little different. Explain what you mean by that. I think it's a great point.
Yeah,
like more about it.
Class clown is in, not taking school serious, not respecting my teachers, as well as I should have. And then lashing out, staying out too late, not coming home at curfew, or, doing things like that. Especially when I got into high school.
Okay.
I can remember getting grounded a bunch of times for, staying out too late or getting caught partying or whatever.
And all these were pretty much kind of things that were kind of rebelling against mom?
Exactly, okay. Yeah, rebellious. And so after high school, and later on, like once I had, got started working and everything, I didn't talk to my mom, because I was holding that resentment. And there was that hole, there was that resentment building up, and it just caused me to be angry all the time, to people at work, or, driving in traffic, or at the store, I would, if somebody wanted to get in front of me, no, I don't have time, or, what I was doing was more important than what anyone else was doing, and so that's the way I lived forever. And I didn't believe in God, I just had no belief in it at all. I'd gone to church when I was a kid, but once I got older, I was like, there's no. There
was no God because of
the way I was treated, when I was younger. I can remember, like when I was really young, like maybe 8 or 9, and like when my mom had been yelling at me and stuff, I can remember like being in taking a bath or whatever, and like actually praying to God, like just kill me now. I didn't want to live already at that young age. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So how does that, so you go through that experience, I think, which your point is very good now. How does that relate to, obviously, substance abuse, and how does that become a part of your life through this process? Because a lot of times when we think of substance abuse, we don't necessarily always understand what the core things are, but obviously these resentments and stuff are building towards something.
Yeah, that was, it was my escape, it was my hole I could go hide in, where I could block out all the things that had happened to me and not have to address them or deal with them. yeah, it was just, it was just covering up, just burying it. But it was a live thing, so it wasn't gonna, it wasn't just gonna stay buried. It was, It was always gonna come back out and haunt me.
So, where did that take you in terms of, because you're not managing that well with your mom, because using becomes kind of the coping mechanism to kind of just avoid the feelings or the resentments or those kind of things. Where did the substance abuse then take you in terms of just your life as a whole?
Man, financially out of whack, getting late on bills, take out a loan to pay the bills, but now I've got the loan to pay, and then the bills are catching back up. Horrible relationships. I would date a girl, and as soon as I started out thinking I was catching feelings, and getting close, I would do something to mess it up because I didn't want to get hurt again,
Right.
It was just like, I think I was reading I think it was in the 12-step book. It talks about your life in addiction's like a natural disaster. It's like a hurricane comes through and everything around you, you're just destroying it, relationships. I've worked for my uncle for a decade, and in that addiction, I'm late for work. I show up hungover. I'm not committed to doing the job right. And so, that hurts him, in that way, and just not being a reliable employee.
Right.
He's hired and fired me I don't know how many times. Fired me, finally fed up with it. Mm-hmm. I'd go work somewhere else for a few months or a year and be like, hey, can I come back? I'll do better. But I hadn't addressed the issue, so I was still the same.
Right. So when you don't deal with those core issues, those systemic things, for a while you can kind of paint over, right? It's like, putting a fresh coat of paint on mold. Right? For a little bit it goes well, but eventually the mold's going to come back and the inner things are going to end up coming back out, and it's going to be a problem again.
Yep, exactly.
So the coat of paint's not going to work here.
Right.
So how did you end up how did you hear about His Way? How did you end up here 6 months ago?
Okay, so 2020, was just the worst year of my life. So of course COVID hit, and I was that was one of the things too, is I would isolate. I had all these issues going on, but I wouldn't tell anybody about them.
Right.
So I had to isolate more. And my grandmother passed away, right before Mother's Day. Then in June, my Aunt Jackie passed away. And then in September, my best friend hung himself. And so that was just like, it was just a whirlwind of just, depression and anger and just all these things. It just threw me into a spiral.
Right.
And at the time I was on probation for a DUI. And so at that point, I didn't care. So I was smoking weed and still drinking. So I failed a bunch of drug tests for probation. And my probation officer was going to revoke it. And I had a court date, and I said, I'm just not going to deal with it. I'm just going to run from it. So packed a bunch of stuff in my truck, took off running. I've got friends that live all across the country. So I was in Chicago and then Minneapolis, Nebraska. I ended up in Dallas.
Wow.
And I was finding, I had a paint job, I did a little landscaping, finding work, and I was settled down there. And it was like that cloud of, all the things that I was running from finally caught up to me. And there was one night, him and his wife actually went out of town for a family thing, and they were like, you can just, stay at the house. And so I was there by myself drinking. And actually, I was texting him like, where's your gun at? I was, drunk as a skunk, and I was just ready to kill myself. And of course he was like, you're crazy. He was calling me like, don't do anything stupid, And then I just had this feeling of, you're not ready to go yet. And so I reached out to my cousin's wife and was like, I need help. And this was like 3 a.m. And she texted me the next morning and was like, come home, we'll help you. Just come home. So having not slept that night, still drunk, I got in my truck and drove 10 hours back to Huntsville.
Okay.
Really stupid decision, but so I got back and I was just staying with them for a little while, just till we could figure, you know, they came together as a whole unit. We're trying to figure out what to do. And my uncle and my aunt and uncle go to Trinity, and they knew Greg Bragg, and he had talked about his way, and boom, called Michael Varketta and said, you know, yeah, I want to do this. And they, of course, put the money up, and which he had to. It was about 3 weeks of me and Michael talking, like, yeah, I think I want to do it. Michael's like, are you sure, you know? And then finally he just called my aunt and was like, he needs to get over here. We got a bed. And so I committed and I got here.
Good.
Yeah.
And it's been great. Have you? I mean,
it's been great to be here. This place is just...
The part of this that I want to look at, I mean, with the steps that we're looking at, like last week, the step was kind of making a decision. I noticed that in the steps, the 12 steps, about half of them are kind of deciding steps, and half of them are kind of action steps. Now, this 9th step that we're talking about today is make direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. So it's kind of an action step now. Last week was kind of decision. This week, taking action. So maybe you could share a little bit about the action of making amends, how that's come through this process. I know it didn't happen overnight. Obviously, it's a 9th step, so this is later on in the 12 steps.
Right.
So what did it take to get ready for that? Tell us about your amends experience.
So to get ready for that, I mean, it took, for me, I think, isn't it step 4 where you do the personal inventory? So it took me really looking deep, you know, inside and seeing what kind of a person I'd been, really looking at my actions in the past, and what I'd done. And the big thing for me too was finding God, because like I said, you know, I didn't believe. And then once I turned my life to Him, and I got baptized right before I came to His way.
What prompted you to turn your life to God? I mean, you'd been pretty adamantly rejecting of God.
Yeah, I had nowhere else to turn. You know, I tried to do it my way, or, you know, other, you know, people saying, but there was no other way. And I ended up, I was with my cousin in Bear Creek, and we went to church. They were like, you got to come, if you're going to stay with us, you got to come to church with us, you know? And I was like, okay. And that first Sunday, I hadn't been in church in, you know, over a decade. And that first Sunday we're there, it felt like I was the only person in the room. You know, it felt like, you know, the pastor might as well have just been sitting right here like we are, you know, just talking directly to me. And I knew right then. And so really doing that and studying the scripture, and then just being around guys like you and like Daryl and you know, the guys here, and seeing God work in everybody, I was like, yeah, you know, He is real. And so I had to do that. That was key, to just admit those mistakes and really identify them. And so then when it came time to take the action, the big thing was with my mom.
Okay.
Because I'd been carrying that resentment, and that was kind of the fuel that was causing me to lash out and do all these other, you know, make these stupid decisions.
I mean, one of the things, talking about this, hearing your story, I mean, your mom had, for whatever reason, some strong negative feelings or negative treatment of you over the years. Obviously, you'd reacted to those and done things that were problematic and disrespectful to her and things like that. However, that doesn't change the fact. I mean, you could simply sit back and say, but Mom mistreated me since I was on the earth.
Right.
And so this is justifiable for me to be rebellious. How do you know, what's the thought process here that says I need to make amends? It seems like you should be sitting there going, she needs to make amends with me, you know?
Right. Well, because I did that, you know, I did that forever. That was my excuse. You know, it was kind of like I had a little card, like, I'd do something stupid. Why would this happen to me?
Right.
You know, I could do that. It was taking ownership of it, you know, taking responsibility, because it wasn't just her, you know, doing that. The way I reacted, I was just throwing gas on the fire. You know, it just made it so much worse.
Right.
And so for me, it was something I could start, you know, I could make it happen. And whether it was worked out and was great, or whether we just needed to stay separate, but at least I've made that, you know, made that effort and started it so that I can move forward, you know, for me.
Sure. Kind of clean your side of the street like this, right?
Exactly. Right. But so I did. I mean, you had talked about it, and I reached out, and
so how did you reach out? Where's your mom at? I mean, did you go over to her house? Did she come here? I mean, how did that happen?
So my parents live in Jacksonville, Florida. Okay. And I've always had a good relationship with my dad. So we would still talk. But I just, you know, she would ask a question or something, and I would be like, I don't want to talk to her. But I reached out. My sister's down there too. She works at the Mayo Clinic. And so I went to reach out to my sister and my dad, to be like, you know, hey, I want to do this thing with mom and get all this stuff out on the table so we can get it behind us. And she was there. And so it was kind of like, well, I guess we're doing this right now. And so we had a big talk, you know, we both cried on the phone, and I was apologizing, she was apologizing, you know, and she explained her side of why she, you know, did what she did and felt like she did, and I explained myself. And it was huge. Now we talk every week, at least once a week, usually more than that. And it's just this big weight off my shoulders of, you know, I don't have to carry that around anymore. You know, I don't have to let that define my actions and my attitude and my personality.
Right.
To me,
right, go ahead.
To me, it was kind of like God, you know, was like, on that particular day that I decided to reach out, God was like, no, you're going to go ahead. You need to get this done. So I'm going to make sure that that y'all just.
Okay. Well, it's kind of one of the things I was thinking about is that when this amends process, how do you know when's the right time to make it? I can see us a lot thinking, you know, kind of this false start kind of thing. Oh, I should have done that chicken out. I should have done, and because it is, I mean, especially when you're dealing with your mom, you're dealing with a childhood situation. I mean, there's a lot of built up things regarding it. Is it making amends something that you just kind of spring on people? Is it something you should call and make an appointment with them, try to set something up in advance, give them some preparation or warning about it in advance? I mean, with your experience, what would you suggest on that? Yeah,
I would definitely suggest that you plan it. You don't just, especially, you know, don't just show up to somebody's house because they might still be angry at you. You know, you definitely want to reach out first, explain to them what you're going through and what you're trying to do, and just, you know, that way you can feel how they're going to react to it.
Right.
You know, because if they're still burning hot, angry, you don't want to just spring out of the blue and cause even worse, you know, situations.
So, I mean, you obviously, when you make this amends, you're contacting your mom. You said that, you know, you cried a lot, that she admitted things as well. But, I mean, really, it wasn't about her admission. It was about your admission. You were going to admit some things, and you had no idea what your mother's responsibility, and you're not really responsible. I think it's a lot of times what gets us conflicted is that we're afraid to make amends because we don't know how the other person will respond. And when you come to realize that the freedom is, I'm not responsible for the response. I'm just responsible for me being open and honest about my part of it. What their response is up to them, and I can't control that. I can't manage that. It's not my job to do. But in your situation, you contact your mother, you were open about things that you're struggling with, and she got open as well?
Yes, absolutely. And I, you know, from her, she had been waiting for the day that I would start talking to her again, and we could mend our relationship. And I was keeping that from her, so by me fixing myself, then I was able to address it
and so you've created the recovery work you did here, you built a bridge to your mom that you could then bring amends, and then that created kind of a two-way bridge in which she could come back and really, because of your leadership and the growth that you had, you'd opened the door for your mom then to rebuild that relationship with you, right?
Absolutely.
Which is beautiful.
Yeah.
So how does that go after that? I mean, okay, you have this big tears, we have this big conversation, then thank you very much, hang up, done.
No.
Do we keep interacting? How does it go for you? How has it been since then?
It's been, like I said, we talk every week, checking in on each other.
Do you keep rehashing these issues?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right.
For me, it's just, now we're moving forward. We, we love each other, which always did, but, we grow together now. We kind of, now we can share in each other's, lives and in each other's growth.
Okay.
And another place, like I'd mentioned, my uncle, working for him. With him, it wasn't hey, I'm sorry for this and sorry for that. It's, I'm at work on time every day. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I'm being a good worker. Okay. It's just those actions, just, the whole change of my behavior, my attitude, who I am as a man.
Right. I mean, sometimes we use the phrase actions speak louder than words, right?
Right.
And in some cases, amends are verbal things. Right. Like with your mom, it was a phone conversation, if I remember, and so you have that kind of verbal type of thing. But with your uncle, it hasn't been even, and I appreciate the fact, it'd be easy to kind of have had these bad experiences with your uncle, therefore, I can never work for him again, I'll just go do something else and kind of run away from it and not deal with it.
Right.
Instead, you went back to him, and now you've had this living amends, right? Where I'm just kind of living a certain lifestyle in which I'm reliable, I'm on time, I'm dependable, I'm not reacting emotionally to things, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
So how has that impacted your relationship with your uncle then?
Oh, it's great. Okay. Yeah, we're able to talk and, joke and because before, there was that tension there,
right.
Where he would send me on a job, but he would, have his doubts whether I was going to. Now it's like, okay, here's your responsibility. Go take care of it, And I'm able to carry that, and he doesn't have to worry if I'm going to do it or not do it, or, he can trust me.
Right. So the beauty of this is that by having these amends, you kind of reopen relationships in which you can have completely different relationships, having something new that you've never had before. And what you've done is you've used the amends to kind of open a door, and then you're going back and forth through that door all the time, and it's reestablishing a completely different kind of relationship.
Yeah.
What about people who are in situations where making the amends is with people that they maybe can't have an ongoing relationship with? Either they're deceased, or maybe they've been abused by somebody who's not around anymore, or it's, a million miles away, they haven't had contact with in years, that kind of thing. What do you recommend people do in those circumstances? I mean, do you just have to kind of say, well, I guess I can't make amends, they're not there. What do you do?
I think you have to get right with yourself.
Okay.
Praying about it, talking, looking at scripture about it. A good thing I heard was to write out a letter, to that person or to yourself or whatever it is, write out a letter, put your thoughts on there, and then you can reflect on that, maybe a week later or whenever. Or another thing, seek counsel, talk to an elder at church or someone that's, what would be the word? Like not associated with the situation. Seek outside, guidance on that. But you have to move past it. You have to address it and get it fixed because even if they're not alive, the resentment's alive.
And the resentment's what you're living with.
Exactly.
Not necessarily them, but the resentment or the events that happened that they were a part of. So you still have to address it. As long as the resentment's alive and well, it needs to be reconciled somewhere, right?
Absolutely.
So making amends, even to people who have deceased or are no longer in your life, is still, and I think letter writing, those kind of things are a good way to do that type of thing. I mean, I've known people who've gone to a grave and just had a conversation with their parent or whatever years later, and kind of work it out that way.
Yeah.
So one of the things about making amends, we've kind of alluded to, is that you have kind of this big event, this one-time experience like you had with your mom. But then how do you keep the ongoingness of the relationship? How do you keep maybe making amends on a regular basis so you don't, because sometimes you end up with a conflict with somebody that kind of you have for a long time, and then you resolve that. But then, if you don't deal with it, you continue to build others. How do you keep kind of an ongoing amends going on in those relationships?
I think the key to that is, you don't just make that inventory that one time and, look at your character defects and you're, okay, I'm good. You're constantly got to evaluate yourself and make sure you're doing the right. And so when any time one of those situations comes up, you got to be willing to say, hey, I was wrong. Or even if you weren't wrong, still say, hey, I didn't appreciate this. You have to keep it open, and so you have to constantly be open and sincere with whatever the situation is.
Right. So it kind of keeps that from not building up again and that type of thing. That's
exactly.
Great. So I know your experience with your mom particularly and with your uncle have been very positive experiences. As you think about making amends as an ongoing lifestyle, is there any amends out there that you're kind of dealing with right now? Is there any ones that you're kind of looking, you don't have to go into specifics, but I mean, that you're looking forward to or kind of evaluating doing, or do you feel like you have most of those behind you right now?
I feel like I have most of them behind me. There's a couple of friends though, like the friend in Nebraska when I was running around and everything, that I kind of, when I was staying there, I kind of overstayed my welcome and borrowed some money from him and stuff, which I've talked to him since then, and he's like, it's okay, but I still would like to, just talk to him again and do something, let him know, hey, I'm a different person now, And
that's a good point. I mean, financial amends is another thing we deal with this, right? And that if you've taken money or borrowed money from somebody that you didn't ever pay back, whether you verbally agree to it or not, that there's still kind of a responsibility I carry that I want to, pay them off, maybe a certain little bit at a time, but just kind of take the initiative, kind of the same way you do with your uncle, where you're kind of little by little kind of paying him back in terms of keep showing up to work on time, keep doing these things, and you're kind of paying it back over the long term, rebuilding that trust and that relationship.
Right.
Well, I know watching you, particularly this amends part and really dealing with your mom was a profound and significant thing.
Yeah.
And it's been great to see almost this huge burden, a burden that, had wanted you at 8 or 9 years old to have God take you out.
Yeah.
That kind of level of burden be lifted, and the joy and the release that's had in your life, and the freedom to be able to go do and be and imagine, dream in ways that you've never been able to in the past because you kind of constantly shackled to that old bitterness.
Yeah, it's
really been there.
Totally life-changing.
Right.
Like you said, that freedom, to take advantage of every opportunity I get now,
So when you look into your future, what do you look forward to? Because at some point you had nothing to look forward to.
Right.
So now today, as you sit and look at your future, what do you look forward to?
Really, I look forward to impacting other people's lives. If they've gone through what I've gone through, or any similar situation, to be able to be somebody they can talk to and share my wisdom that I've acquired, to just be that servant of God, being that light in the world, to just be there for people, not just my family, but a stranger on the street or just anyone that I come across, to be an example that, they can look up to and inspire them.
Well, we've certainly been an inspiration to me, and I know you're inspiring a lot of guys around you, so I appreciate your leadership. I appreciate you being willing to take on all these steps, but particularly this Amends step, and really building a foundation through it that leads to a great future. So thank you for sharing with us, Jameson.
Yes, sir.
And I thank you for watching, listening to our program today. If you'd like to learn more about His Way, you can check out our website at hiswayinc.org.